during my interview process, they said sort of our theory is, entertain first, sell second. And so from the day I was hired, my job, especially as someone who's handling organic content instead of paid ads, I was always encouraged, just make people laugh, just make people have fun. We want to grow our audience and make sure that our pages are a place that people want to be because they're consuming content that entertains them and not because they're being sold to.
Welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something on earth to get our work out there doing this job. So if you would like to be a part of a marketing professional with a background in editorial work, copywriting, small business management, and he is the organic social media manager at Shinesty, which is a men's underwear company. And he uses creative storytelling to basically drive the engagement, growth, and brand awareness of this company. And he does it in such a unique and creative way. It seems effortless when you watch his videos and reels and all the work on TikTok. I highly suggest that you go and follow because you will be entertained and then not even realize that it's being traced back to this company and that you're being sold to. And I think that's the way that it really should be, right? We talk about the importance of leading with entertainment first, leading with engagement, and then talking about whatever it is that you're trying to sell to somebody and offer. And he does this with humor. He does this with creativity and fun. And so this is going to be a great episode for you to make sure that you hop off of this podcast. Yes, I said that. And go check out his work on TikTok and other social media platforms as well, because if you don't, you're really going to miss out on the wealth of just creativity and engagement that Duke has managed to lead people into with his work. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Duke Harten. Well, Duke, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited about this conversation today because you are somebody who is new on my radar. A fellow friend introduced us, and the work that you do caught my attention over on TikTok, which admittedly I'm not really there much, but you've been drawing me a little bit more there with your content for sure, and just this. Really storytelling, this engagement that you have going on there, and then as well talking about fun today as well. So before I get too far into this, I like to turn it over to my guest and say, you're at a party and you're introducing yourself, and somebody asks you what you do for a living or who are you, what do you do, kind of thing. What do you say?
Great question. My parents actually asked me this question a couple of weeks ago because they have trouble describing what I do to their friends. But I say that I work on the marketing team for a men's underwear company, which is more or less true. If people seem interested and want to know the real answer, I do all the organic social media content for an apparel company that specializes in men's underwear, but we also make a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, that certainly, if you were just at face value to hear that. You would not think the kind of content that you come up with. I definitely encourage anyone who is curious to go check that. Now, do you primarily just post that content on TikTok, or you post it in other places as well?
Yeah, so TikTok is the major focus of my efforts right now. Short form video content on there. A lot of that gets repurposed for Instagram. We also do a lot of photo stuff for Instagram. So I handle all organic social across, TikTok, Instagram. We use Twitter and YouTube a little bit, Facebook a little bit, but most of it is the two big ones, TikTok and Instagram. And then I also do some stuff for our paid ad team, meaning like write commercial scripts and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, primarily the organic social, meaning anything that's not supported by paid ad dollars.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So how did you find yourself, and for lack of a better term, we'll just call it content creator, right? How do you find yourself in that position? Like, I'm sure, this isn't a thing that's on your radar probably, right? This isn't like when you're a kid, you're like, hey, I want to grow up and do, right? These things didn't exist. So how does one find themselves in the position to actually do this?
Um, you know, I'm still sort of reeling. I've been with the company for 2 years, and I still can't believe this is my job. The the job that I had right before this, I was managing a wine shop and wine bar in Los Angeles, and I handled their social media. It was a fairly small town. It was like 4 or 5 thousand Instagram followers, no TikTok presence. But I had a history in journalism and copywriting. I've done a bunch of different writing. Um, Long form biography, nonfiction, ad copywriting, some social media marketing stuff, you name it. And a friend of mine who worked at this company said, hey, we're looking for a social media manager. You should apply. And I was like, yeah, it's not really my thing. But then the more I dug into the company, the more fun it seemed. And I put together a pitch deck and talked about what kind of strategy I would use to grow their accounts and blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, they're hiring me to be their social media manager. And to be totally frank, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But I think that's what a lot of social media managers start out as. It's such a new format and a new medium that there are all these self-proclaimed experts. And I found that almost none of their advice actually works in practice. And so I think it's just sort of one of those fun jobs that like we're learning as we go. And I still can't believe it's real.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that you have such a strong personality in your videos and sense of self, right? And I'm sure that there was this moment where you had to go, okay, here's what the standard practices are, right? And here's the stuff that I really wish I could say or really wish I could do, right? Like, what did that look like for you? Like, how did you move from I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do, what somebody's telling me to do, into, you know what, I'm going to do the things that I want to do and that really are in my strengths and gifting?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. That's exactly what happened. So at the very beginning, especially with TikTok, Instagram, I was posting memes about our products and current events and, stuff like that, static posts. They do okay on Instagram. But to crack the video sort of mystery, I was like, okay, well, everyone says you got to hop on TikTok trends. You got to be doing the sounds and the dances and make sure that you're like abreast of what's new and hot on that platform. And none of that really worked. It's like 2,000 views here, a few hundred views there. And I was getting frustrated and I felt stupid. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something that I think would be funny and that I'd want to watch. So I woke up one day at 8 a.m. and I texted our CEO, and we have Slack. I should be messaging him over that official channel, but I texted his personal number. I said, good morning, Chris. And he was like, good morning. And he didn't realize I was doing a bit, but I did this for 15 business days in a row. And every day it would get a little more absurd. And I would be texting, and the gist of this series was texting our CEO good morning every day until he blocks my number. And that was the first thing that sort of blew up. And I think it was successful because people knew it was real. It was an employee kind of playfully messing with someone far more powerful than them. So it's a little bit, aspirational in that sense. Like everyone wishes they could kind of mess with their boss. And yeah, that was the first success. And then I took that kind of theory of I want to make the content that I want to watch and ran with it.
How did you manage to convince, people that I'm going to create some content that is not your standard. Here's the product, here's the features, the benefits, the sales copy, all that kind of stuff, but rather this almost like lead with entertainment type of posts.
I mean, I've been really lucky in the company I work for, which is called Shinesty. When Shinesty started, it was, a bunch of early to mid 20 somethings. Started as a vintage clothing company. They would resell vintage party pieces, and that has slowly evolved over the years into a luxury underwear company, which is a whole nother story. But during my interview process, they said sort of our theory is entertain first, sell second. And so from the day I was hired, my job, especially as someone who's handling organic content instead of paid ads, I was always encouraged, just make people laugh, just make people have fun. We want to grow our audience and make sure that our pages are a place that people want to be because they're consuming content that entertains them and not because they're being sold to. So, to answer your question, I was fortunate enough not to have to convince anybody that that's the move. People more experienced and wiser than me were like, hey, here's the move, go forth and do it. And so that's what I've done.
Mm. It's really incredible because when you lead that way, you're getting people to kind of almost forget about the fact that you're attached to something that is selling you something, right? And they're getting lost in either the narrative, of what's happening, the jokes. They want to be a part of something, right? And I think that level of engagement, it's certainly not easy to do. And that goes back to you're talking about the organic reach, right? That it's not the standard sales copy stuff and ads and whatnot. But how do you like you're following your own curiosity in things that are of interest to you, right? You're doing that, but I'm sure to a certain point you kind of exhaust the well a little bit. How do you find inspiration to keep doing these things, and what do you do for that?
Yeah, I mean, I like to refer to it as finding marketing opportunities that are hiding in plain sight. So, for instance, most people listening to this probably haven't seen our videos, but we had one successful series that had nothing to do with our product. That was it was called Hole Content, and it's a lot less raunchy than it sounds like. But basically, I found a hole in the floor of our office, and I looked down at it, and I could see light shining through, and I was like, "What is that?" And I could see, if you look down through it, the top of a woman's head in the office below us. We didn't know these people, totally different company. And I was like, well, this is an opportunity that's just presented itself. I got to make something of it. So we started lowering notes through the hole, and then they started sending stuff back up. And next thing you know, we're trading Slim Jims and Milanos and sending stuff in the elevator, and it became a whole thing. So there's like silly opportunities like that I just think, what could I possibly do with this to make content? And then there's other stuff where I'm like, okay, I can take this opportunity and kind of, I don't know if shoehorn is the right word, but find a way to put our actual product into it. So, we get 1,000,001 requests, as I'm sure a lot of DTC companies get, of people being like, hey, can you send me free stuff? And so I saw one of those come through on TikTok. A guy DM'd us and he was like, hey, can I have a free pair of underwear? Pretty please. I think I really deserve it. But the guy's username on TikTok was Batman. And so I was like, is this the real Batman or a fan account? And he was like, no, it's the real one. And I was like, I don't know. Tell me something only Batman would know. And so I go through this whole back and forth with a guy who obviously is not Batman because Batman's a fictional character. And I just deadpan that I'm convinced that this is the real Batman. So I 3D printed a Batarang with our logo on it at the local library. I wrote in crayon, I drew a picture of me and Batman and wrote a note asking for him to send it back. And then I included a pair of our underwear and sent it off as a fan package. And, people like that video because they're like, this is entertaining content. And then, of course, you get the comments that are like, going to buy a pair of underwear now to support this, haha. And, that's sort of my approach, is like, make funny content, put the product in where you can, but don't stress too much about it, and the sales will come later.
Yeah. Are you somebody that in your personal life that you find a joke and run with it and like really run with it?
I mean, yeah, my my friends and I actually, my Rhode Island pals, I'm staying at my mom's house in Rhode Island for a bit, helping her recover from surgery right now. And we've got this old People magazine with a boy band on the cover that we've been passing around, like the traveling pants. And I enlisted one of their girlfriends to help me break into his house and hang it above his bed. I had to get like 4 hooks from Home Depot and screw it into his ceiling. And he was like, wow, this is what you're doing with your time now, huh? So, you know, it's fun to play whether you're at work or during your free time.
Yeah, it's commitment to the bit, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure that feeds into the content that you're creating because when you have that sensibility to be like, all right, yeah, I'm going to commit to this, or I'm going to find the funny in this, you're more open to things that people would normally not even see, right? Like that hole in the floor that you're talking about. Has there ever been a time when you're like, you've done something or you were about to do something and you're like, maybe this is a little too far. Maybe this isn't quite going to land,
I mean, yeah. So I was going to call the Colorado Rockies because the MLB has got this uniform issue where the new pants this season are see-through. It's been reported on in every outlet you can imagine. It's been a whole thing. And so I was going to call the Rockies and impersonate my CEO and pretend that I was the CEO and wanted to talk to someone. And I thought, you know what? This may be a bridge too far, even for Shynasty. So I texted him and I was like, hey, do you mind if I impersonate you when I call the Rockies? And he was like, do what you got to do. Go ahead. Ask no follow-up questions. At this point, he's just like, yeah, make funny content, whatever. So there's been moments like that where I kind of have to gut check against someone else and be like, hey, is this going to be too much? But a lot of times it's not even me who ends up going overboard. Like, you talked about opportunities that just appear to be one thing and become something totally different. We recently did a March Madness competition because I saw a bunch of companies making memes, like Dude Wipes, for instance, made a meme about, March Madness brackets, blah, blah, blah. So I started a competition within the office, and my colleague Austin really took that and ran with it. And for like the third round of challenges, he actually, on his own dime, without telling anyone, flew from Denver to St. Louis to complete one of the challenges at the house of his opponent in that round with her husband. And, at the beginning, I was like, oh, this will just be like a fun little office competition. And by the end, it became just something totally huge and viral. And, so it's fun for me, but it's also fun for my colleagues to be able to take part in this and get away from their everyday job.
Yeah. I think that speaks volumes to the fact that you're creating opportunities for people to have fun, to engage. And there's a deficit, I think, today of fun and of the ability to kind of lose yourself and have some of that silliness that's the reward in and of itself. How do you see even that, like turning the corner a little bit now and talking about even company culture? How do you help bring some fun and liveliness? Obviously, you're doing these videos and incorporating some of those in, but like, are there any other things that you think are important elements to having a fun company culture?
I mean, yeah, it depends on, obviously what your industry is, what the size of the company is, and kind of like what you can get away with within the context of your workplace. But just speaking from my own experience, more people than not are willing to have fun if given the opportunity. Everyone needs to get their job done, but people also like to have a little bit of levity in their day. And so one of the first things that I did when I started at Shynasty was I introduced something called Music League via Slack. And Music League is a website/app that basically you link it to Spotify. Someone comes up with a theme like, best road trip songs or whatever. Everyone submits a song and it's anonymous. And so it puts it into a playlist, and then you listen to it for a few days, and then you vote on whose songs are the best. And then the winner is announced, the identities are revealed, and it became this really like sort of cutthroat, but very in a very wholesome, as wholesome as a cutthroat endeavor can be. It became this kind of like company-wide activity where at its zenith, I think we had like 36 or 38 players. in a company of 70. So, people are really willing to have fun. And it was just sort of 5 minutes a day, smack talking in Slack. And I never even bothered making content out of that because I didn't want to cheapen it by making it into a sort of digital commodity. That was just for us. And it was a really fun way for me to get to know all my new colleagues, for them to kind of talk to people within the company they had no reason to speak to on a professional level. And it was simple and it was free. And I think stuff like that, it takes 5 minutes a day. It's not ruining anyone's productivity. It was just a nice way for all of us to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I love that idea. And especially the fact that you underscored it's 5 minutes a day. Like, people can spare that. I mean, they're people can waste a lot more time than that for sure on some other things. But to have that little bit of a break, have that engagement, I think is really important. And to actually let people know that that's not only okay, but that's encouraged. I think that's when the culture starts to change a little bit more, right? Because people aren't feeling like every move I'm doing is being watched, and I can't necessarily have any fun with this. I got to always be productive. I got to always be, proving myself or whatever. What would you say if somebody is in a company where they don't necessarily embrace that? Is there something that individual can do?
I mean, it's tough to say. I worked at a small, now defunct marketing agency on the East Coast for a year. And the culture was definitely not conducive to fun. It was, everyone who was there was fairly unhappy to be there. There wasn't a whole lot of joking around, not a lot of goofing. But even there, I did what I could. I introduced themed Fridays where we would take 5 minutes. And so, like, one was British Royal Friday, and we would take 5 minutes and do a BuzzFeed quiz, like, which British Royal are you? And like, the 6 people in the office sort of latched onto that. The boss was like, this is silly. But the 6 employees were psyched because it was like one glimmer of positivity in an otherwise, what's that comic strip? In an otherwise, like, sort of Dilbert-esque week. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think it's worth a shot for anybody who wants to have fun to just introduce one of these sort of goofy little things, like, hey, everyone take a personality quiz, or like, hey, we're going to play paper football at lunch, or whatever you can think of. And if it gets shot down, it gets shot down, whatever. You're most likely not going to get fired for, doing something goofy like that. But I'm also a firm believer in, if you're not happy, change your life. And if you're at a place where you hate your work, you hate your job, you hate going into the office, I listened to one of the earlier episodes of your podcast, and one of your guests said something like, life's too short for work to suck. And I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Is there anything that, now understanding that you may not want to give this away if there is something, but is there anything that you've been thinking about, like, oh, this would be really cool or fun to introduce in that context that you haven't done yet?
In terms of like new content ideas that I'm making?
In terms of actually the office environment kind of, activities or engagement.
I mean, yeah, I think I want to do something with the Summer Olympics because the March Madness bracket was so successful. I think it would be fun to have an underwear Olympics where I challenge people to do, like, one of the athletic events could be, how many pairs of underwear can you put on in a minute? I was thinking, instead of real countries, we would assign teams fictional countries. So like Narnia or Genovia from Princess Diaries. So just like goofy stuff like that is always kicking around in my mind. Someone put up a 65-foot statue of a hot dog in New York, and I'm trying to figure out how to get money for us to fly out there and do something with that, because we have underwear with our hot dog on it. So like every day I spend at least an hour just kind of like thinking of new goofy crap that I can do.
That's amazing. Do you keep like a log of ideas running, or is this pretty much just a mental thing?
I mean, I have in my notes app a note that's just called TikTok. And then I have like, it's, I can pull it up right now. And I'm not going to explain what any of these mean, but
okay, fair.
I'll just read them to you. Parking tickets for Claire the photographer, movie trailer, Oklahoma, Monique. And so like, I just like write down these one-word things where I'm like, okay, so I just moved to I'll explain one. I just moved to a new apartment. around the corner from our photographer, Claire. And she has a very distinctive bright orange car. And so I wanted to print out fake parking tickets and put them on her car, once a month, once every 2 months, something like that. Um, and I'm not sure exactly what the angle is there, but I've warned her that a prank is coming. And so stuff like that, the internet responds well to, because they'll see me joking around with Claire, they'll see her reaction, and that's just like an easy, it'll cost me probably $2 at Staples, and we'll get 1 million views.
I love that. I guess by this point, people already have come to know you as the prankster and joke guy. So I'm sure there's a little bit of that spoils some of the joke, right? Because people know, oh, if something weird is going on and you're around, like you're probably the culprit, right?
I mean, yeah, everyone's always kind of on guard at the office, but I also make a point. I think that part of the reason that our content has been so successful is that I don't think almost anything we've done has ever been punching down. It's always, punching up. The joke is either on me or it's a joke that everyone's in on. And I think that sort of like the wholesome quality of the content, even when it's a little bit silly, is what people respond to. And so even though people are on guard, they're never nervous. It's always like, oh, what's he up to next? Oh, he did X, Y, and Z, and now we've got a bunch of free snacks at the office. So, do no harm is my motto.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably people who secretly are like, man, I hope I get to be a part of something. Maybe they're a little more, internal, but.
And some not so secretly. I mean, Austin and Taylor, two of my colleagues who have been featured in a few of the TikTok videos and have been kind of like main characters in those. And I'll post something and they'll be looking over my shoulder as I'm editing, and then they'll be like refreshing TikTok for the first 5 minutes it's up, and they're like, it's not moving quickly enough, no one likes it, everyone's gonna hate it, oh my god. And they're like divas, and I'm like, guys, relax, it's a TikTok, everyone's gonna love you, we'll get the views, just sit and let it happen. So it's funny how people whose primary jobs have really nothing to do with performing or content creation have become an enthusiastic part of the process.
Yeah. Now, has your mom been one of those? I know she's been in several of your videos. Is she enthusiastic about being a part?
So like I said, I'm home helping her recover from surgery. She can't drive, so I've been her chauffeur. But part of the conditions of me being home, I've been kind of tormenting her and saying, I'm going to put you on camera. I'm going to make you endorse Paul Hammock Pouch underwear on camera. And she does not want to be put on social media. So I've done, several pranks to her to try to encourage her. I chained her refrigerator shut and put her on a reverse hunger strike. I made a fake ransom video with my youngest niece saying, Grant, help me. And so finally, I think I've cracked her. She looked at me the other day and she said, I think I'm ready. And I was like, for the endorsement? And she was like, but you have to let me do it how I want to do it, and got sort of a devilish gleam in her eye. So I've got no idea what she has planned, but stay tuned.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I'm sure that, as much of this looks like, hey, this is fun and this is you coming up with these ideas and then having to actually execute them, it's a lot of work. It's more work than people realize, I'm sure. Talk a little bit about like the strategy piece of that. Like, how do you know when to plan something and when to move on to something else? And like, what does that look like?
I mean, a lot of it was trial and error. For the first year, there were a few big wins. And I think conventional, like I said, social media is still in its infancy, all things considered, but conventional wisdom says, do trends and make your content look like this. And I think it's different for everyone who's doing this in a professional capacity. And so what I did was I just said, okay, I'm going to see what works, and then I'm going to try to identify the elements of each video or each piece of content that I think people are responding to, and then use those as sort of a template for what's next. And so what I've been able to kind of figure out, and I think I'm right about this, is that people are responding to I don't know if wholesome is too strong a word, but they're responding to the positivity of the content. We're never, making fun of people or punching down. They're responding to a little bit of effort, but not too much. They don't want things that are produced and fake, but they like to see when I go above and beyond. Like, there's I don't know how new it is, but there's a recent trend of married or soon to be married couples sending companies requests for gifts. Like, oh, we love your brand so much. Can you send us something? So I got one of those in the mail, and I did my research, and I found out that this couple had never purchased anything from us. This was just a form letter they were sending, but their note was like, we have so many memories of your brand. We have so many memories, blah, blah, blah. So I made them a custom card, kind of cheekily calling them out. And that's about as close as I ever get to kind of making fun of someone. But it also was like a nice gesture. Like, I went to the trouble of drawing a cartoon of them, of making the card, having all my colleagues sign it. So that combined, the effort and the positivity into one video, and, it performed fairly well. So my kind of MO right now is identify an opportunity, figure out the sort of Shinesty angle that no other company is going to take on this opportunity, like March Madness, pitting my coworkers against each other. Do it in a fun, positive way, and keep it concise. Try to tell a story in under 2 minutes.
Mm. Yeah. And you do it well.
That's the recipe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What do you do as far as like the evolution of things, right? Like, obviously being on technology itself is always moving forward at a crazy pace. And not just trends, but like the way people interact can change. The way people want to experience things can change. How have you seen that, even in the amount of time that you've been doing it? How has that played into what you do and how you do it? And how do you anticipate that or react to that in a way that enables you to not be like, oh, I got to play catch up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those things that's so gradual while you're steeped in it, but then you look back and you're like, oh, the differences are really stark. Like, when I started 2 years ago, TikTok, at least what I was seeing was, tons and tons of dances. That was the era of the "My Money Don't Jiggle Jiggle," or the I think it was the Lizzo song that everyone was dancing to. And, there's still an element of that, but and maybe it's just because my algorithm has changed, but what I've found is that TikTok is moving more and more towards content that is hyper focused on creators who do one thing well, and not just, feeding you trend after trend after trend of people you don't know or care about. And that's why I think that the Shinesty content I make works, is because not only have I sort of become like the digital face for them, that people can see me pop up and they're like, oh, this is a Shinesty video. Like, this company's probably up to something goofy and I want to watch it. But I've also introduced a lot of my colleagues in these videos, and people will comment on videos that have nothing to do with the office and be like, whatever happened with Austin? Like, did he get back from St. Louis okay, or whatever? And so I think kind of just being aware of the type of content people are consuming and knowing that they want to connect with a person is important, especially if you're trying to run an account for a brand. Like, I think a lot of brands are scared of personalizing things because, like, oh, well, what happens if I lose my social media manager? Or like, oh, people don't want to, buy from Doug, the social media guy. They want to buy from Nike. And like, to an extent that's true, but those brands have had decades to establish themselves. And the younger generation, who's now, Gen Z and the kids in college now who are going to have spending power in the next 5 or 10 years, like, they consume media a lot differently than our parents did. And I think that it's, a kind of savvy marketing strategy to accept that and tailor your brand towards that, rather than trying to do what the powerhouses of old have done.
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on something briefly in what you just said. And I'm wondering, is there any thought of like, because your voice is such a strong voice, that's the brand, right? That it's tied to you as an individual, and them worried about you leaving. And then how do we either replicate that, or what does that mean for whatever happens next? You know what I mean? Like, has there been any conversations or any thoughts around that kind of thing as far as when the individual's voice becomes part of the brand voice?
It's something that I've considered because, when I first started putting myself on camera for the brand, I thought, well, I'm not going to be here forever. It's a job and people leave jobs. I have no plans to leave. I love it, but I'm not going to be 80 years old making content for Shinesty. So, yeah, it's a great question. What does happen? And I don't know that I really have an answer because I haven't gotten there yet. And I haven't seen, a creator who's tied to a brand disappear. I'm sure it has happened and I'm sure it will happen, but I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I think things grow and evolve and change. And, maybe the story is that like sort of, Obi-Wan and Anakin story minus the Darth Vader part. Like, maybe I decide I want to go start a B&B somewhere and I'm going to become an innkeeper. And so I have to hire an apprentice to take over. Like there's a million and one ways to tell the story of succession. And I don't think brands should be afraid of tying their voice to one or two or three of their employees because, people respond to people. And even if it becomes a ship of Theseus thing where in 20 years, Shinesty has entirely new employees, like it still is the same company and it still has the potential to make the same type of content, meaning it's like got the soul of positivity and humor and playfulness without relying on, Duke, the social media guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but with the recent developments of like TikTok and the talk of the ban and all that kind of stuff, and some people like it's going to go away altogether, whatever. Like, where do you land in that? And what would happen if something significant happened to TikTok? Like, what would you do as a response?
Great question. Short answer is I've got no idea. And the slightly longer answer is I'm not super worried about it. One, I think human nature is that money is king and there's so much money in TikTok in America that I have to imagine, by hook or by crook, someone's going to find a way to make it stick around. However, I've been wrong about my predictions before, so it's very possible that it could go away. But what I do know is that there's demand for this type of creative. And so if TikTok itself goes away, either there's going to be a mass migration to Reels on Instagram or YouTube Shorts or some sort of new app that doesn't exist yet that steps in to take TikTok's place as king. But it's one of those things where like, I'll worry about it when and if it happens. I don't want to start, rowing a lifeboat right now and changing my strategy. I want to just do what's fun and what works for our company. And then if in a year TikTok goes away, we'll pivot and figure something else out. And I think other creators, other brands, other companies on social media, I think they should do the same thing. John Deere is hiring a TikTok specialist for 200 grand right now. And they even say in the ad, like, we're hiring this for now with a kind of like wink and nod at you. Like maybe it'll go away, but, worry about today. And then when tomorrow happens, we'll talk about it then.
Yeah. You also spoke about like other platforms or apps kind of emerging. What is your personal take on like, how do you know what to invest in as far as like, okay, something new comes, there's maybe a little groundswell and you're like, I think maybe I should be on this or whatever. Because, when you're an early adopter, you only have so much time and energy and effort. You can't be all places and do it well. How do you know if something is worth investing in, do you think, like in your personal opinion?
I mean, I've pushed and luckily, again, I'll say nothing but great stuff about leadership at my company because I love my bosses. But they've been super supportive of just listening to what I think we should do and kind of backing my strategy. And my strategy is, you know what? The people I know, whether they're my parents or my little sister or my friends and peers, like TikTok and Instagram are the big two. There are brands that are crushing on Twitter. I'm sure that there are creators who are crushing on YouTube Shorts. There's got to be someone out there who's killing it on Facebook, but heck if I know. I think that the big two are TikTok and Instagram, and I think that those demand a level of effort and content strategy and resources, whether financial or time or personnel, that's more than enough to keep me occupied. And so I think a lot of companies, you look at social media manager job postings and they're like, we want to be on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Threads, Twitter. Like they list and I'm like, no, you need to figure out what works for you, where you think you can make money, where you think you can organically grow an audience, and know why you want to be on it. Why do companies want to be on Pinterest? I've got no idea. I don't think it's for us. We're a men's luxury underwear company. We don't need to be on Pinterest. But that was one of the things in very early days that was told to me, like, hey, do you think you could bolster our presence on Pinterest? And I was like, honestly, I don't think I should bother. I think it's a waste of time and resources. And I think you should let me focus on Instagram and TikTok. And they said, okay. And it's been fairly successful for us.
Yeah. In terms of looking to the future, and I don't necessarily mean like new content as far as bits and things you want to explore, but I'm talking like bigger than that. Is there anything that you can think of where you're like, this is something I would love to do, or I could see myself pushing into in the future? Maybe it's even the near future. Maybe it's another type of medium. Maybe it's something else, but something you're like, this is a ground I would love to take.
Yeah, game show. I would love to design and host a game show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the British show Taskmaster. Have you ever seen that? So basically, this comedian designed a show where he gathers 5 comedians and he films each of them individually doing different tasks at a house. And they can be as simple as eat as much watermelon as you can in 1 minute, or they can be super complex, like, you have 6 months to take the most compelling photo for the Taskmaster. It's on, I think, season 17 right now, but basically the comedians complete these tasks, they're filmed doing it, and then they all gather months later in a studio to watch back the footage. And then the host, the Taskmaster, judges them on how well they did. It's really creative. It's really positive. It's really fun. I'm obsessed with it. And something like that, I said to my mom the other night, I was like, this is probably my dream job, is being responsible for designing something as fun and, mentally stimulating and inclusive and just, kind of, this sounds really corny, but kind of like heartwarming, it's just like which you don't expect from a game show, but there's just these really positive, great moments. And I think that would be a really cool gig.
Awesome. Well, You heard it here first. If you go, I'm sure it's not if, it's when you actually get to do a game show like that. We'll look back at this moment and say, see, look, we nailed it. We called it.
Yeah, I hope so.
Predicting future right here on Creative Chats. Oh, man, Duke. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Just sharing your experiences, your humor, your insights. I mean, these videos that you do, I know they take a lot of work. And so thank you for investing in the bit so much that, you're obviously doing this for work and there's obviously product behind this, but you're also bringing a lot of joy, a lot of smiles, a lot of fun to people's lives. And that is a tremendous thing. So thank you for that. Where can people go to, follow you, follow the accounts, like any links, any places you want to lead people to? Here's your opportunity.
Yeah, Shinesty.com is our website. It's the word shine with STY on the end. So Shinesty is the name of our company. We've got men's and women's underwear, super comfy socks, all sorts of stuff. Check us out on TikTok, Shinesty Threads, Instagram, same handle. That's where you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, if people are not already checking that because they want to know what all the laughter is about, I'm encouraging people right now, as long as they're not driving, to go there and check this out. And again, thank you, Duke. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.